So this is a regular council meeting of Monday, June 28th, 2021. It is 6:27 and we are going to start the meeting. Call the meeting to order. So the first item is adoption of the minutes, the Governance and Operations Committee meeting of June 14th, 2021, and the regular council meeting of June 14th, 2021. The recommendation is that the minutes of the Governance and Operations Committee meeting and the regular council meeting, both held June 14th, 2021, be adopted as circulated. Do I have someone to make that motion?
I'll move.
Councillor Santori and Councillor Butler. Any errors or omissions on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried. Second is our delegation. So we have Katrine Conroy, MLA for Kootenay West, with us today, and we put a letter of request in for her to come and speak to us on homelessness, mental health, and substance use issues. So Katrine, welcome to Trail virtually, and we look forward to hearing from you. The floor is all yours, and you're on mute. No, you're off.
I think I'm not mute. I think I'm okay.
You're good now. Yep, thank you.
Good. Whew. Are you guys looking forward to being able to do this in person again soon? Technology is great, and it's allowed me to be able to do a lot of meetings from home and be able to have meetings with people all over the province. But I have to tell you how much I'm looking forward to being able to meet in person with all of you. So, Lisa, I know what's the priority is. If you want to just start by giving an overview, or do you want me to just jump right in, or what?
I think you can jump right in. We did send a letter inquiring if you could speak to us about the government's plans for the homelessness, mental health, and substance use issues and supports for that vulnerable population. This is becoming an increasingly prevalent situation in Trail as around BC and Canada. And as our local MLA, we wanted to hear from you on this issue.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the issues around the overdose and drug use and what's happening there, because I think it's a lot of what's happening right now across the provinces is a lot of it's to do with what is to do with COVID. We actually were getting numbers down when it came to overdose deaths, and then quite significantly. They were down in 2019, they were down by 36% from what they were when we inherited government in 2017. But we recognize that COVID has just thrown this crisis into a tailspin. The lack of, when the borders closed, which is bizarre to think of, but the lack of safe drugs, so to speak, made it even worse. The fact that more and more dealers were using fentanyl or other drugs in their product and caused even more overdose deaths, which has been really difficult. And the fact that a lot of people think of the overdose crisis, they think of people living on the downtown east side or homeless people, but actually the biggest growing demographic of people actually dying of overdoses are young men who live alone, ranging in age from around 30 to 50. And that's the biggest, and as soon as with COVID, they were by themselves even more, and it increased the numbers of deaths. So it's just been a real struggle. We have expanded and done put some pretty incredible support into dealing with the overdose crisis, because we recognize it needs to happen. We opened up 38 new expanded overdose prevention sites across the province and hoping to do more as time goes on. We've expanded the access to safe prescription alternatives, which was, there's a 400% increase in people receiving safe alternatives to the toxic street drugs that are out there. So right now there's over 3,000 people who are now getting much more stable and are safer because of that. In outreach terms, we've been able to hire more street nurses, social workers to actually go out and connect with people when it comes to treatment. We've opened up the phone lines for people that are, on their own at home alone and not dealing well with it. And we've actually increased treatment beds. And right now we've doubled the number of youth beds in the province because we want to make sure that we can support the youth. This year, we're going to add 194 more recovery and treatment beds across the province and putting actually $330 million into mental health and addictions, trying to support the full spectrum of recovery, because we recognize that especially with the homeless situation, if you don't have those supports in place, the housing doesn't work just on standalone. You need to have the supported housing. You need to have those supports there for people. So we've done a lot of work on that. I know that Minister Malcolmson is working with communities across the province to try to ensure that we have those supports in place. But it's we just can't get it done fast enough for some communities, which is a sad reality, and that's part of the issues around COVID as well. There's been, a lot of people that are users or who could end up coming into an unsafe supply don't necessarily have access to the internet, which is, and a lot of the meetings have to be done COVID friendly or like this, which is really difficult to do. So, but we know there's more work to be done, and I know that Minister Malcolmson is reaching out to communities, and I know that she's, we've talked about your situation. She's seen the letters. I think there was a few of them that you sent. So she's aware of it, as but trying to make sure we can put those supports in place. And to that end, I know we've talked about it with Minister Attorney General Eby, who's now responsible for BC Housing, responsible for housing and homelessness, as well as some of our other ministers, and they understand the situation, and they are trying to reach out to communities. And I know that did you guys get that slideshow that BC Housing sent? Did you guys all get a chance to see the slides? Okay, so you saw the work that's being done, trying to get as much done as possible, and we are committed to delivering that 114,000 homes in the next 10 years, and well on the way. A number of that is supportive housing, because we recognize that supportive housing is what I said, you need it to support your community, and we just need more affordable housing. And I know that BC Housing has been working with you, and I've been working on some of the issues. I know they've provided over 200 affordable units in Trail alone, and they've also are looking at other options. And the winter shelter that was opened up by the Trail Association, they're going to keep funding that until, I believe it's next March. So that will continue to provide services. They're also, I know they're in conversations with around issues around the Center for Fair Center for the affordable housing, as well as secondary housing, as for the abused and women and children fleeing abuse. So I know there's discussions going on with that. There also, there's a number of seniors and families in Trail that are receiving the SAFER grants and being supported that way. And there's the new housing on Columbia Avenue, which I understand people have moved into as of May. Is that, yeah, so I know I haven't been anywhere to see any of those things up and running. I can't wait till we can get and see them, because that was a big one. They're also looking at more support options for people in Trail. So that is something that they're going to be looking at and reaching out to the city to figure out how they can do that. One of the issues in a lot of communities is available land. I know that the one on Columbia Avenue was built on Crown land, and that was one of the reasons that it could be done. So it's always looking at the community and saying, do you have land that can be utilized in that way? So and the communities that have been able to find land, their housing gets built faster. So, But I know BC Housing is looking at options and trying to find, ways that they can support the city and work with all of you, because they recognize the issue. I mean, it's not just an issue in Trail, it's around the province, and COVID hasn't helped with this either. So, but BC Housing is pretty committed. Minister Eby's very committed to making sure that he gets the support out to communities that he can. And I think that they're hoping that there'll be some more good news for Trail in the future. But at this time, this is what I have to share. So, yeah. I don't know if there's questions.
Are there any questions for Minister Conroy? Councillor Santori, go ahead.
Hi, Katrine. Welcome. How are you doing?
Okay, pretty warm.
Katrine, I guess where our frustration is coming in is that, and we do appreciate what the province is trying to do, and we don't underestimate the challenge that the province is undergoing with homelessness, drug addiction, etc. BC Housing has, and of course, Interior Health have identified that we do have an issue here in Trail, just like they do in other communities across the province. But what is somewhat discouraging for us, in our last meeting with BC Housing, they acknowledged the problem, they acknowledged the need, but tell us, which I've never heard of in Trail before, is that our property values are too high. And that's discouraging when we see in the media over $100 million over the last 5 months. The government has purchased properties in Vancouver, motels, hotels, you name it. And there were good pieces of identified property in the community that don't even come close to those numbers, 1% of those numbers, and yet they feel that the values exceed the assessments of the property. But having said that, we cannot I don't think BC Housing could judge assessments from a year or two ago and compare them to where we are today. Things have just taken off rapidly in the last 12 months. So, I think what we're asking, and I know that BC Housing is at arm's length from government, and you try not to politically interfere with BC Housing, but I think we're asking you to. But I guess we're discouraged in that, we're not getting the attention. We're getting attention. We're just not getting any action. And I personally don't buy the it's not affordable response. So, if you can follow up on that or give council more direction, that would be very much appreciated.
So Sarah's on the line too. I forgot to mention that. So she's my constituency assistant. And so we're both taking notes. There she is.
Hi, Sarah.
And we will, some of these questions that are directed towards BC are right. I'm not going to speak on behalf of BC Housing. I can give you the information that I've gotten from them and the discussions I've had with Minister Eby in that sense. But we will take the concerns to them and make sure, now that I've met with you, I can say that and that I've met with you and I can take those concerns to them. But and some of it is they look at the assessed values of property and some people right now, because property values are high, people are saying, oh, BC Housing's an easy place to go for money, not recognizing that, yes, there's millions of dollars there, but it has to be spent all across the province because there's needs across the province. And so some people are thinking this is a good opportunity to get more for their house than they would have gotten a year, or more for their land than they would have gotten a few years ago, kind of thing, like you said. So Sandy, it's an issue, but I know that they look at the money they have and figure out how they best utilize it. And some of the issues with some of the bigger communities is there's a lot more people that are requiring the services, and so they're trying to prioritize, but at the same time they recognize, and they've heard loud and clear that we need to be, they need to pay attention to the interior as well. It's not just about Vancouver, Victoria, Nanaimo, those bigger cities. It's the interior. We need them too. It's per capita type of thing, not just based on those huge numbers that they see in the Lower Mainland or in other bigger centers.
Okay. Thank you,
I hear you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Councillor Dobie, is your hand up?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, Katrina.
Carol.
Yes. And just adding on to what Councillor Santori has just mentioned, if we could at least just hear back from BC Housing, I think the last meeting that we had with them, which was a public meeting, if I remember, is well over 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago. So if we could just get some kind of update from them as to, have they had time to assess our properties? Have they run into other roadblocks? Just so that we can know sort of where we're starting to sit in the pecking order, if it looks like we are going to get a resolution to this before year end. And the other thing that I would just like to add, and I'm sure this is happening in other communities, when we just look at assessed value, that really doesn't apply in just about every instance of a home, because we see homes constantly being sold even before they're listed, and also homes going into bidding wars. I don't know if you were here for the previous open session, but 2 people spoke to that 2 houses in their area had gone into bidding wars. So to say the assessed value is a major issue, it's kind of contrary to what's really happening. So thanks, Katrina.
Thanks, Carol. I did catch the tail end of the previous discussion, and I mean, I know affordable housing is a big issue. It's and throughout our region. So.
Okay, any other questions for Katrine? Colleen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Payson. Hi, Katrina.
Kelly.
You actually look very cool in that forest behind you.
It's not as cool as a lot.
Yeah. Hey, so you had mentioned that they're increasing the treatment beds across the province, that there was 194 more treatment beds coming available, or how many of those would you happen to know? Are they coming any to this area? Increase that treatment beds.
I believe the closest treatment beds for this area is there's some in Kelowna, and they doubled the number of youth beds in Kelowna as well. So
okay,
yeah,
so now
the bigger centers. Not that I'm aware of, but I will double check just to make sure.
Okay, and also, I guess for me, another issue that we're having is the shelter. I mean, you know, there's only 6 beds in the shelter. I don't know if there's an opportunity for us to look forward coming into the colder weather. We need to increase those beds if possible. We're just trying to think ahead, because you know what, we don't have any room, we don't have area or a space, and we just don't know. I mean, how are we able to do that?
Is there room to expand?
We don't have the funding either.
Is there room to expand at the current shelter?
No.
But we did recommend a site within Trail, and they didn't seem too interested in it, where they could have moved CDS up there and expanded it, the shelter, and maybe even a couple of permanent apartments for low income housing.
Yeah, I know they have certain criteria.
That was an old hotel.
There is, Katrine, I think if COVID restrictions lift a little bit, there might be an opportunity to increase the bed count in the shelter, but it still is not meeting the needs of what is anticipated for this winter. So our social housing group is working with CDS to try to identify different sites that, you know, to get us through the winter, understanding that there's going to be a real crunch coming up. And what are we going to do? And it seems so strange to discuss it because we're in a heat wave, but you know, winter is going to be coming, and our vulnerable population is still going to be left exposed. And even now, without having the shelter space, we're having to open up. There's a couple churches that opened up to try to provide temporary respite so that the homeless and vulnerable people can get off the streets, and they're set up as cooling stations.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I mean, it's hot now, and it's just as much of an issue as when it's cold, that's for sure. So what I would suggest that you do is if you have the availability of expanding it to talk to, like, put it in writing now and see what, and I can reach out to David and see what they're going to do. I mean, I'm not sure how many. I know that they've been looking and trying to expand, but if it's it depends what you know, if things get sorted out with BC Housing as well. So
Okay, so I just saw a chat come up from Syra that you might need to go to another meeting. Is that true?
I do have another meeting that I can stay a couple more minutes before I
Okay.
have to get.
Okay, is there
Yeah.
anyone else that has a question for Minister Conroy? Councillor Butler, go ahead.
Hi, Katrina, it's Paul.
Hi.
I just was wondering, more just some commentary from you. I mean, this opioid problem is obviously not just trail specific. And, unfortunately, many people sort of look at it that way. And I was just wondering if you had sort of some comments around, what you're seeing out there in other communities. I know you've already said a little bit, but sort of from a provincial lens, where it's obviously a big deal. And I was just sort of wondering if you could just sort of expand on that and how much of a big deal it really is out there and how many communities it's impacting.
I can't give you an exact number, Paul, of the community, but I would say it's probably impacting most communities, and some, and even if you have a small communities like here in the Kootenays, our communities, it's you have 1 or 2 people that die of an overdose. That's a big impact on a small community. It's just as big as having 40 people die in the bigger cities. So, and we know people. We know the people that are at risk in our own community. So it's always harder. And it's been the mainstream media tends to really focus on some of those big numbers and what's happening in those bigger communities. But at the same time, we've been pretty vocal about making sure that they recognize that it's issues here and the interior as well that need to be addressed. And to that end, I know that Minister Malcolmson is looking at ways to ensure that there is supports in the interior, and then that the housing we're looking at has supported housing. It's not, because that's one of the bigger issues as well, making sure that there is that support for people to transition. So it's a tough one. And like I said, before COVID, we were actually on a really good trajectory going down, and then COVID hit, and so I just hoping that in the next few days we'll be getting more announcements on what's going to happen with stage 3 and what can happen with that. So yeah, hopefully a lot more positive for folks. So, yeah,
thank you.
but we recognize that it's a big issue, definitely.
Okay, very good. Katrine, are you timed out now with us?
I got seconds.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
good.
Yeah, but
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll get the answers and get back to you. Syra and I will work on that, and for the ones that just see what we can do. So
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Katrina.
Nice to see
Thank
you.
you.
Take care.
Take care. Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay, so item number 3 is public question period. Public question period is when people are able to email in questions for us because we're in Zoom, so they can't attend the meetings. Ms. McIsaac, is there anything in public question period today?
Yes, there is, Your Worship. We have 2 questions submitted by Lizette Tucker, who is a resident of 1816 4th Avenue and the business owner and operator of 1519 2nd Avenue. She has written questions to be addressed at the public question period, not public hearing, that we held earlier, with respect to a recent announcement by the city. She is asking, what is the full cost to the city for the early resignation of our CAO, David Parahudoff? And will there be a lawsuit coming regarding the breach of the code of conduct by Councillor R. Kashoni? Would you like me to speak to those questions?
Sure.
So the first question again was, what is the full cost to the city for the early resignation of our CAO, David Parahudoff? And I think here it's important to first clarify that Mr. Parahudoff did not resign his position. He did file a complaint against a council member under the council code of conduct and violence in the workplace policies that the city has in place. A third-party investigation was completed, And there was an underlying potential claim that council had to deal with to reduce the city's risk and financial exposure. And with respect to the full cost to the city, an agreement was reached releasing Mr. Parahudoff of his contractual obligations to perform work after September 30th of 2021, but with the continuance of salary and benefits from October 1st, 2021 to the end of his existing contract, June 30th, 2022, which comes at an estimated cost of $255,000 in salary and benefit costs for that time period. I guess I should also note that there will be potentially an overlap or duplication, I guess, so to speak, of CAO salary once a new CAO can be recruited later in this year. The number of months of overlap was unknown at this time, so it'd be impossible to quantify what that cost will be. As well, there will be some salary adjustments related to the redistribution of Mr. Parahudoff's responsibilities in the interim, and those costs are yet to be quantified. Lastly, there are legal costs that the city has faced with respect to the handling of this claim. We are looking anywhere about $40,000 to $50,000 in legal costs can be expected. So that relates to the costs. The second question was, will there be a lawsuit coming regarding the breach of the code of conduct by Councillor R. Kashoni? And the answer to that is that no lawsuit against the city will be forthcoming as a result of the complaint filed.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any other questions that have come in through public question period?
That is all that I received for
Okay.
today's meeting.
Thank you. Item number 4 is communications, and 4.1 is the 2020 annual report. And I believe I am turning this over to Reno Merlot. Mr. Merlot, can you please provide the presentation on the annual report?
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening to you, and good evening, Council, Ms. McIsaac and Sandy. I'm here to support our 2020 annual report. And as per the report to Council, City of Trail must bring forward an annual report for Council's receipt and approval in accordance with Section 98 and 99 of the Community Charter. I won't go into the legalities of it. It's, I think it's all laid out in the report to Council. But what I would like to address is hopefully Council does approve this report. And once Council does, the committee for the annual report will submit this to the Government Finance Officers Association, again in support of the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting. As you all know, we've submitted this since 2016 and have received these awards. So we're quite proud of our annual reports since then and look forward to receiving the report for our 2020 annual report. And just a couple highlights. We always like to provide staff profiles. This gives the reader of the annual report a look-see at some people that the public may not see or the public may not know. So I think those are good things, good stories to tell. There's also some interesting facts about the city operations that the public probably wouldn't know about unless they read the annual report. And then finally, a little personal opinion. I think what Council did with the parking meter donations and donating those monies to the local food banks, that was a wonderful thing. So that's on page 15. So thanks to Council for that. Finally, I want to acknowledge the annual report planning committee, Andrea Jolly, the communications and events coordinator. We also have Marion Lowe from Marion Lowe Design. And then there's myself, Reno Merlot, Deputy Director of Finance. So thank you, council. Pretty proud of this one. We work all year on it, planning, developing, writing. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Reno. And it's always amazing to see the annual reports come year over year with a different look and feel to them. And it's so creative and inviting. And as a result, we have won a few CAN4 awards. So that's fabulous. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Merlot before we move to receive the report? No? Okay, so the recommendation is that the Council of the City of Trail receive and approve the 2020 annual report for the City of Trail, and the report be retained and made available for public inspection. Do I have someone to move that motion?
Move approval.
Shoney, do I have someone to second? Councillor Jones, thank you. Last chance for questions on this one before we move forward.
Thank you, Reno.
No?
Thank you, Reno.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
Reno.
No. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Carried, thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to bylaws.
Everyone, good night.
Good night,
Night.
Reno.
Reno.
5.1 is zoning bylaw amendment bylaw 2906 2021. This is the third reading, and this is the public hearing that we had at the top of the hour. The recommendation before you is to receive or to give the bylaw its third reading. Ms. McIsaac, now this had some considerable public I guess, response against. So is the process again to be deferring it back to staff to do additional reporting?
Yes, I can summarize. So council does have a policy in place that if objections at public hearing are raised, the council will defer third reading until you have opportunity to have a robust discussion around those concerns raised. So if there are items raised at public hearing that you feel you need staff to bring back information to you, we may need to do some investigation, provide some summary reporting, then you would want to defer third reading at tonight's meeting and direct staff appropriately. When considering the input that was received from the respondents to tonight's public hearing, I would summarize them as follows. One being the negative impact on neighboring property values due to a stigma associated with rental properties. A second was that this zoning change would be precedent setting in the neighborhood for both established and to be developed properties, and concerns around impacts on traffic and street parking in the neighborhood. So with that said, I didn't hear any particular concerns that might require further reporting, but I'm certainly open to input from you on council. From a planning perspective, we can appreciate that proposed secondary suite in neighborhoods and trail that have been predominantly established as single family residences can be met with some hesitation. But from a land use perspective, it is important to not focus on who the end user will be. A single family home in any neighborhood can be rented out and made available to the rental market. So the focus is on use, not so much who is going to occupy it once constructed. And with that said, a 2-bedroom upper level and 2-bedroom suite, 4 bedrooms in total, from a density perspective, is not much different or perhaps even lesser than what some of the Mural Heights properties that are already developed would have in terms of the number of bedrooms and size of families. So for a 2-bedroom main level and 2-bedroom secondary suite, you wouldn't expect that there would be families with large number of children. Might be more suited to younger couples who are just building and developing their family. It may be more suited to seniors whose kids have left the nest. So the focus shouldn't necessarily be on who's residing there, but whether or not that use fits the neighborhood. With respect to precedents, council has determined that with secondary suites, you do want to have an application for rezoning associated with each and every one so that you can consider the merits of each application on their own. So they're not precedent setting. With any application that comes in, you look at the merits of the application on their own basis. With respect to impacts on traffic and street parking, there could be some modest increase depending on the age of the people who are living in the home. But with respect to street parking in particular, the property as developed, the construction plans, they are meeting and exceeding actually the off-street parking that would be required. The plans show a 2-car garage for full-size automobiles, as well as driveway parking for at least 2 vehicles. So while the bylaw off-street requirement would require 2 stalls for off-street parking, based on what they're proposing, they would have at least 4. So I guess I am open to hearing input from council if you feel that there is information you require from staff before deciding whether or not to give 3rd reading at tonight's meeting.
Okay, I'm just going to open the floor for council.
Tough one.
Councillor Butler, go ahead.
If it's all right, I'm just going to recuse myself from this discussion, Ms. McIsaac, on a business-related matter with the applicant.
So just for the record, then Councillor Butler, you being the branch manager at Kootenai
Kootenai
Savings,
Savings Credit Union, yeah.
where the applicant does business. Okay, it would be appropriate for you to excuse yourself. We won't be able to invite you back in. We can send you a text message. Okay, so with that, we will indicate that Councillor Butler left the meeting at 7:04 p.m.
So he's not able to rejoin the link after?
Well, he hasn't left the meeting officially, like he hasn't left the Zoom meeting. So he's got his video off. We presume he has stepped out of the office. He's not going to engage in discussion with you. And then when you conclude, I
send him a text message.
I will send him a text message and let him know when to come back into the room.
Okay, I misunderstood you there. Okay,
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so this is open. The floor is open for council to discuss this and Councilor Joby.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Payson. So, Ms. McIsaac, you emphasized that this would be appropriate use of the land. Am I correct?
In my opinion, because it continues to be a residential use, I think it does fit
Yeah.
the residential nature. So from a planning perspective, where we sometimes see conflict is between residential and commercial uses and where those boundaries about one another. What we're proposing here and being proposed by the applicant is a residential use, and that fits the single family residential neighborhood nature.
Okay, thank you for further clarification.
Okay, anyone else have any comments? Councillor Gattafoni Robinson.
Michelle, he also said that he lived in Rossland. And I'm assuming that he is, and maybe you don't even know, we don't know if he's going to be living in the upper section of this house, do we?
Oh, that doesn't matter.
At the public
Well, sorry,
hearing,
Sandy, it matters to me.
At the public hearing, Mr. Menelaus did indicate that he is proposing to construct the dwelling, live in the upper floor for a number of years with a rental suite below, may be occupied by a family member of his, may not be. But with that, after a certain period of time when he's looking to expand, he would be utilizing both the top and bottom floors as a single family eventually. That was what he had indicated at public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Santori, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Eleanor, I didn't mean it in that.
Yes, you
context.
did. You did.
No, let me explain myself for a minute. When I'm saying it doesn't matter, what I'm trying to say, or what my intention was there, that the fact that what he says today that he's going to move in, he is not bound by that. He can decide a month after he owns the property to sell it to someone else, and we can't go back on him. So it doesn't matter what what I meant is, it doesn't matter what he says today. You can't hold him to that 3 months from now, 6 months from now, or 8 months from now. That's what I meant. So if you took it the wrong way, I apologize. Furthermore, I think that Michelle, she explained it quite well. The fact that it's a rental in the bottom suite means somebody could move in next door to you tomorrow where the property was immaculate and they're new owners with no rentals who don't take care of their property and have unsightly premises. So, I mean, the fact that it's a rental, some rental property there doesn't mean it's going to be a mess or that it's going to attract all of these transients or whatever other arguments. So, I mean, there are no guarantees moving forward, whether it be a residential home or a residential home with a secondary suite that complies with its use. So anyways, that's my 2 bits worth on that.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other comments, or would you like to make a motion on this? Counselor Kashoni, and you're on mute, just so you're aware.
Although I understand exactly what happens or what he means about the suite, given the sort of structure of that particular area, and given the fact that I really believe that the bottom suite would rent for at least $1,500, maybe $2,000 a month or more, I think at this time I'm not going to be in favor of this particular rezoning. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to comment on this or make a motion? Counselor Jones, and you're on mute as well.
Thank you. Michelle, I just had a question because there seems to be a lot of concern about the parking on the streets. Is there anything that, any kind of enforcement that we can do about the parking? I know that this is a busy area because there is a lot of mountain bikers and hikers that go up there. And, now we have another home coming in there with 4, possibly more cars parking and going in that area. Is there any way that, I guess I'm just looking for a little bit more information about the parking on the streets maybe, or the speed zones, or, I mean, if you listen to each of the people that did speak, all of them sort of mentioned the parking and the busy streets.
Steep.
So I didn't include in particular the speeding concerns in my summary. I don't think that is a matter for you to consider with respect to land use. That is an RCMP enforcement matter. If there's concerns around excessive speed, that would be dealt with irrespective of a land use decision being made by council. I am a frequent trail user of the Bluffs Trail Network. With respect to parking, yes, it is a busy area because it is a trailhead. Most of the parking, though, as I have experienced it, is always up along the top, almost as at the top of Albert Drive, where it meets with McBride Street. I have not experienced, and that's not to say it doesn't happen, I'm just saying in my regular use of the trails, I've not experienced any or any occurrences where there is spillage down McBride Street, and particularly as far down as where this property proposal is. But I don't negate the comments coming forward that the traffic can be busy there, but that is due to the recreational nature of the trails and the trailhead there. And that is protected by a statutory right-of-way, preserving the use of that trail network. And so I can appreciate that it is a concern for the neighborhood, but not so much a land use planning one, more related to the amenity that has developed so successfully there.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, still, does anyone else have anything to say on this matter? I just want to put a motion forward. Councillor Doby?
So at the beginning of this, did we not refer to the fact that before we make a decision on this bylaw, that we could refer this back to administration for more information?
You could, but I'm not quite sure what more information you would need. I think that would probably have to be spelled out because staff is probably not going to go in unless there's something identified. I don't know what they'd be looking for. So you just have to provide staff some
Okay,
guidance
that's
in that.
fine. And I didn't hear everything you said. I said, I didn't hear everything you said because you froze on me, but I just got
Oh,
the last
sorry.
part. That's okay.
I just said, just to be clear, I just said you can defer it back to staff, but you would have to provide them with some guidance on what you were unclear of and what you wanted them to get for you for information.
Okay.
If I could just add, Mayor Pazin, I can appreciate that it's a difficult decision of council when you do hear input at a public hearing. Your neighborhoods in trail are well-established, single family. We do not have many zoned areas that would allow for two-family use. The introduction of the secondary suite that was enacted last year by council was one small way of taking steps to increase our housing capacities here. We're very, very land poor. So our single family neighborhoods of Mural Heights, Tadnack, Sunningdale, Glen Mary, Juanita, we would expect applications such as this. That doesn't mean that everyone would want to take advantage of the opportunity, nor would any undeveloped properties necessarily wish the same. So with that, I think it's important to focus on the application at hand for you. With that said, staff would recommend that you proceed with third reading. Again, we're open to providing you with further information if you feel it necessary, if there was any technical issues raised that you feel you need answers to.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we proceed with third reading. Might as well take it to a vote.
Okay, do I have someone to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, Councillor Doby, thank you very much. Does anyone have any other comments or questions of staff before we go to a vote? No? Okay, all in favor? Against, if any? And Councillor Kashoni is against. Carried. Thank you. Okay, item number, sorry?
If I could just have one moment to invite Councillor Butler back.
Oh, yes, sorry about that. Okay, Councillor Butler, you're back. Thank you. So item number 2 is 5.2 zoning bylaw amendment bylaw 2907 2021 first and second readings. And Ms. McIsaac, can I give that to you?
Yes, please. Thank you, Your Worship. Council has before you an application from Betsy Matamoros, who is applying to rezone the property at 1254 Green Avenue from Hillside Single Family Residential R3 to Hillside Single Family Residential R3S to allow for the development of a secondary suite within the principal dwelling. The property at 1254 Green Avenue is zoned Hillside Single Family Residential R3, which allows for its use as a single family dwelling. In the application, the property owner indicates her intention to update an existing basement suite to create a legal suite that meets BC Building Code requirements. However, it's important to note that the city recognizes that property as only one dwelling unit and was unaware of an existing suite being contained within it. So we do not consider it to be a legal non-conforming suite. In accordance with the owner's wishes, it is being proposed that the zoning bylaw be amended to designate the property at 1254 Green Avenue as R3S. So thinking of the regulations that council put into place back in 2020 with respect to secondary suites, you did stipulate that secondary suites would be permitted in the single family residential R1 and single and two family residential R2 zones, but it would require rezoning to the R1S or R2S as applicable. In this case, an application is coming forward in the R3 zone, the Hillside Single Family Residential Zone. And at the time the zoning bylaw was amended to permit the secondary suites, it was specifically recommended that the Hillside Single Family Residential R3 zone be excluded from the amendment due to the housing density on the west side and the lack of off-street parking that we see in this neighborhood. Despite that, the property owner is requesting council's consideration of the zoning amendment, and a zoning bylaw has been drafted accordingly for your consideration of first and second readings. When we look specifically at the property, it is located in West Trail, a neighborhood that is designated primarily for single family residential use, although we do have some legal non-conforming use in the neighborhood as well. Concerns that might arise with an increased density of a secondary suite could include an increase in traffic, a lack of sufficient off-street parking, and increases in noise. And these concerns could be significant in the denser neighborhood in West Trail. While there are certainly some properties in West Trail where lot area is sufficient and parking would not be an issue, with respect to this particular property, it is small in size with limited off-street parking available. And with that said, it would be the staff recommendation that the property is not suitable as a two-family dwelling, as it could negatively impact the neighboring properties. With that said, if council does agree to give first and second reading of the bylaw at tonight's meeting, a public hearing would be held at the July 19th regular council meeting, so that you would hear input from the neighboring properties. With that said, the recommendation as framed in the report prepared by our Deputy Corporate Administrator is worded that council consider if zoning bylaw amendment bylaw number 2907 should be given first and second readings. So to be very clear, staff is not recommending that you do proceed with first and second readings. And in fact, from a planning perspective, and because of the densities in the R3 zone that we already experienced, it would be recommended that this application be denied.
Okay, so with that said, do I have someone to make a motion? Or do you want to open it up for questions or discussion?
I'll make the motion.
So moved, yeah.
And what motion are you
To deny.
making? To deny, okay. And Councillor Butler, were you seconding that motion?
Deny.
Yes, I can second Councillor
Okay.
Catherine Robinson.
I just wanted to make sure that's what you wanted. Is there any comments on this motion? No? Okay, all in favor? Against, if any? Okay, carried. I believe that was unanimous. Okay, next is 5.3 Trail Recreation Fee Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 2908, 2021, first, second, and third readings. Ms. McIsaac, are you taking this one?
I sure will. Thank you. At Council's previous Governance and Operations Committee meeting that was held June 14th, you considered reporting that was prepared by our Director of Parks and Recreation, Tricia Davison, with respect to the fees and charges that are implemented for recreation services and park use. With that, you did endorse a fee increase that will take effect starting in September when we see registrations for programs and fall sessions come into play. There is an approximate 2% increase in the fees that are charged, and the bylaw was prepared in accordance with the direction provided by Council at the Governance and Operations Committee meeting held June 14th. And with that, it is being recommended that you give first, second, and third reading to the bylaw.
Okay, do I have someone to make that motion to give first, second, and third reading to the bylaw? Councillor Adobe, do I have someone to second that motion? Councillor Garofoli Robinson, thank you. Any questions on this? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried. All right, council committee reports. Councillor Santori, you're up for your report and the GOC report.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item on tonight's agenda was a presentation from Dan Derby, our regional fire chief at the Kootenay Boundary Regional Fire Rescue. And he spoke about the overdose crisis in Trail and the increase in calls that they've been experiencing. He also discussed the fact that he and Sergeant Wasinowicz have been doing walking tours of the community and being versed on some of the issues surrounding overdoses in our community. Unfortunately, as a result of COVID and other matters, we have seen a significant increase over the previous year with respect to these type of calls. Dan Derby also gave us a brief explanation as to the cause of the fire that took place in West Trail. And I believe he also announced that there will be a fire ban coming in effect on June the 30th. As far as operational reports, we received a report from Robert Baker with respect to the Trail Regional Airport. It was received by council. Also at the airport, council approved a project of $165,484, which was awarded to Selkirk Paving for the paving contract. In Parks and Recreation, we received a report on the Regional Age-Friendly Coordinator Report. This was a Tri-City agreement that we undertook to support the seniors in our community. Original funding was provided by Columbia Basin Trust. That has since, that funding is no longer available. However, they will continue with certain segments of the program moving forward. It was relatively successful given the circumstances of COVID, and many of the programs that they would have liked to have delivered were not able to. So council did receive that report. In Public Works, the Cambridge Creek and Violent Lake Dam decommissioning project, that job was awarded to, I can't pronounce this name, Sablatus Environmental at an estimated cost of $803,000, including GST. Janitorial services contract award has gone to Russell Patterson in the amount of $76,800 per year, excluding taxes. The Green Avenue Rebuild Project, True Consulting has signed a contract for $34,700 to do the administration and construction management of the project. And K's Road Contracting Limited in the amount of $611,697, not including taxes, to undertake the necessary work. And then finally, the Charles Lake water line replacement project has been awarded to True Consulting in the amount of $75,000 exclusive of taxes. And those were the items that were dealt with in GOC this afternoon, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Councillor Santori? Seeing none, on to Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor Payson. I only have one item to report tonight, and that is the Area Kootenai Boundary Local, the Association of the Kootenai Boundary Local Government will be having an in-person convention, and that will be held on October 1st to the 3rd, and it will be in Radium Hot Springs. So planning is still underway. We met this weekend, Friday and Saturday in Nelson. We're still planning the convention, and as soon as there's any more news on it, I will forward it to council.
Great.
Thank you. And
Thank you
that's
very
my
much.
report. So say the dates, October 1st to the 3rd.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions on that for Councillor Jones? Seeing none, Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one item of note this evening. On the 17th of the month, I attended the LCC DTS meeting on behalf of council. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Butler. Any questions? None. Councillor Doby.
You're on mute, Councillor Doby.
Sorry about that. I missed that prompt.
Thank you, Mayor Payson. I just have a couple of items, small items to report. I attended the last market on the Esplanade, and I think that the amount of response that we've got from the young teenagers that are interested in joining the cooking class has been a lot bigger than what we expected. So I'm glad to see that we got that kind of response. On another small item, I'd just like to say accolades to two citizens in the community that moved ahead and got a cooling center under the United Church. I think they did that all within a couple of days. There was Marilyn Rackison and trying to think of the other lady's name. She's a nurse in the community, a nurse practitioner. So I just like to say kudos to those two ladies that reacted so quickly and got this running. So the basement of United Church, where they have the food market, is quite cool, and it is open every day from 12 to 6, and the shifts are broken out into 2-hour periods. So anybody that might have 2 hours that they can spare, I urge them, they can get in contact with me, or they can contact the United Church for further information. That concludes my report. Miss McCluskey is the nurse that I just couldn't get her name. So Miss McCluskey, and who was the other person and responded so quickly in getting this happening. And, so we've got two going out there. We've got the one in CDS as well as the one in the church. So that's going to be a big help to getting people off the street in this heat.
Yeah,
That's my report. Thank you.
yeah, thank you for bringing that forward. It's really important. And I think also there was also a call for volunteers. So if anyone wishes to volunteer 2-hour segments to help during those times, I'm sure you could get in touch with the United Church or Marilyn Rackison. I believe she's probably in the phone book, or through City Hall, we can get you in touch if you can volunteer your time. And I believe the cooling station was going to be open as long as this heat wave is with us. Good. Councillor Kashoni, you're next.
Thank you. Last board meeting, we approved $237,000 for a health and wellness position at the regional district. This position will be a 2-year term position, and the $237,000 is taken from the COVID-19 money, so it won't impact taxes. We also received a report on how many new hirings we've had at the regional district between 2015 and 2021, and we either have 13 or 14. We're trying to identify exactly how many new hirings. This would be additional people added in the years 2015 to 2021. Director Worley released a transit plan, which is going going to be coming through to council by Trail Transit, or BC Transit rather. And they have agreed now that the transit exchange will have a washroom. That washroom will be for staff only at this point, but they are now going to be looking at whether or not the grant proposal, which is an 80 to 20% grant proposal, would be able to provide a washroom adjacent to it or back to it, to have a washroom that would be used by all the people who are at the particular exchange. So that won't be coming back through the transit committee again, but it'll be coming directly to council. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gattafoni Robinson. Oh, sorry. Is there any questions for Councillor Kashoni? No. Okay, Councillor Gattafoni Robinson, go ahead.
Unfortunately, I have nothing to report, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll continue with my mayor's report. So several meetings in this last 2-week period. So first was the Trail Health and Environment Committee meeting. Unfortunately, I had some technical issues, so I wasn't able to attend for the whole meeting. But the focus on that, aside from the regular reports, was on community engagement and trying to engage the community with the program, not only sitting at the table, but also in other ways. So that is going to be a work in progress. Air Quality Working Group, which what we are doing with that, we're focusing again on our communications material. I'm so pleased to say that we're in the final stages of getting 2 of the documents out. So if anyone has questions about air quality and trail, they'll be able to access the information on the THEP website. So I'll keep you posted when that finally gets updated, and probably going to be in the fall. What we're finding with the 2 committees, because it's very technical work, is that we're focusing on using plain language editing teams once the documents are made up, because sometimes with the technical experts that are putting them together, you get so accustomed to working in your scientific language that the language doesn't necessarily resound with our community at the community member level. So we're really working to get everything in a language that is efficient and effective and impactful for our community. Attended a Divisions of Family Practice meeting, and this was the Lower Columbia Needs and Asset Study, and this was to discuss healthcare in our area around primary care networks, to solicit opinions on how and what services should be co-located with primary care physicians, as well as identifying gaps in healthcare provision in our community. There was 2 West Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital District meetings that I attended, the executive and the board meetings. And really the main discussions on both were setting the priorities for the UBCM. So trying to get alignment with IH on their priorities, but also looking at priorities with a rural lens. And I think everyone can probably agree that delivery of healthcare in the rural BC area is quite different than or can be quite different than in a urban area. So we are looking to really align with IH, but have strong advocacy for our rural sites. The capital projects that will be supported are long-term care in Nelson and across our hospital district, MRI and Trail, an oncology department in Nelson, and emergency department in Castlegar and Nelson. Improving patient transport services so that those in rural and remote areas can get to sites for treatment, as well as still focus on primary care network, knowing that there's a shortage of GPs and a lot of patients are still unattached to their primary care or don't have a primary care physician. Had the Southeast Regional Mayors and Regional District Chair meeting, and that was on Friday or Thursday with Minister Josie Osborne, the Minister responsible for Housing, David Eby. And the topic of this one was housing needs and goals. And it was a really positive experience speaking to the housing crisis and Trail for the vulnerable population. And what's nice about these meetings is that it's generally our group of leaders and mayors and area chairs in our region, and can be CAOs too. So what it does, it allows us to kind of speak with a common voice and then understand what other areas are going through as well with housing issues. So I described our housing plight and being the largest municipality in our area, And thus, as a result, I termed us the hub for homelessness. So we are as the largest site, the hub in the Greater Terrell area, and really reinforce that we are land poor, and we require BC Housing to step forward and assist with land acquisition for a social housing or supportive housing project. I reiterated the city and council's support to stabilize this vulnerable population through food, clothing, and shelter, through supportive housing and wraparound services. Dr. Eby, much like Minister Katrine Conroy, Minister Eby, much like Minister Katrine Conroy, acknowledged the advocacy letter that the city had sent to him, which was really positive. He thanked us in the city for their support and our willingness to even engage in these kind of conversations around the vulnerable population. He did identify, much as Minister Conroy did, that Trail is identified as an area of need, not only for housing, but for complex care related initiatives. And he, thanked me for my eloquent description on the issue as a housing hub. I'm not sure, a hub for homelessness. I don't think you'd heard that before. And he really did commit to circling back with BC Housing on our matter. So I was really pleased with his response. It was really clear that there was absolute awareness of the letter and our plight here. And I was really happy that he was willing to bring it forward. And then with respect to the Social Housing Committee, they've renewed their commitment to lobby the government for housing assistance. Also acknowledge that another winter is going to be on us shortly, and that with a lack of shelter space, the vulnerable will be in yet another crisis. The committee is fully engaged in doing what they can to support the vulnerable population through short and long-term shelter and housing. So that was a productive meeting. And again, we're very lucky to have so many people in our city that are willing to move the needle on the homelessness to help those vulnerable populations. Now I want to advance an item for the regional district representation for our city. So I am in receipt of correspondence from Diane Langman, who is the chair of the regional district. She expressed her personal experience with our regional district Kootenay boundary rep, Councillor Kashoni. I took this very seriously. I took it seriously because it was in writing. Not only was it in writing, but she had expressed how the experience had impacted her, and that she, it has affected her mental health, and also that she has had to seek some mental health support because of this. Things are often said, but when they come to you in writing, I felt incumbent to bring this forward. And as chair or mayor of a municipality, you have the authority to place representatives into their committee positions, except for statutory appointments, such as the RDKB rep position, or in our case, the library board position, and that takes a vote of council. And in fall 2018, we voted to have all our RDKB appointments out in the open, and that was a unanimous vote of council. So what I'm doing is right now I'm advancing this issue to council for council to consider to see if we wish to make a change at the RDKB due to the conduct of Councillor Kashoni. I'm going to be brief with my summary. So an email was sent to RDKB directors by Councillor Kashoni with respect to dam revenue and other factors, which was seen to be inappropriate, ripe with conspiracy theories, and many directors took offense to it. And it was brought to my attention by a number of persons. And because of that, the RDKB chair, Chair Langman, was compelled to respond in writing to Councillor Kashoni, and she copied me on this. She felt the need to defend her integrity and her morals and her reputation. And statements were made in the email against directors, including Chair Langman, regarding policy advancement. She cited, many words in the letter: bullying, intimidation of the board, confrontational behavior, that trust is eroding, that the functionality and confidence of the board is being eroded. Chair Langman felt that the email was an attack on her character. She stated that her views of the city of Trail have become tainted due to our appointed representative. She's concerned about the future relationship with the city of Trail and the RDKB and to MI. I'm concerned that this relationship will deteriorate further. The city's relationship with the RDKB has been tumultuous at times over the years, but in the past 2 election cycles, there's been enough changeover to see an increase in collaboration and good relationships with our neighbors, and that's really positive to see. But I'm concerned that the behavior at the regional district by Councillor Kashoni parallels the behavior which resulted in early departure of our CAO. When we voted in 2018 for the regional district position, Councillor Kashoni indicated he would hold the position for a couple of years and then willingly let someone else take over. That is viewed as very, I think, prudent for sustainability of the city. We are now at 2.5 years of our 4-year term. Councillor Kashoni is still at the helm of the RDKB. I just want to say with bringing this forward that his commitment to the RDKB and the city of Trail through the RDKB and his knowledge for budgets is not in dispute. And it's not in dispute, he's been a long-term councillor, but his approach is. And I really feel that it's council's time to make a decision if we will move to mend relationships with the RDKB and create a sustainable path forward to the next election. Councillor Kashoni has already been removed from the finance committee of the RDKB due to his inappropriate interfacing with staff, as cited by Chair Langman. And Councillor Kashoni is at risk of losing further committee appointments as a result of his behavior, and thus would put the city at a disadvantage as the city of Trail is the single largest ratepayer in the regional district. This wasn't an isolated event, and it is a concern. So council is now in a position where they should determine if Councillor Kashoni, if his extensive knowledge at the RDKB outweighs the significant reputational damage that is occurring to the city. Again, we're halfway through our term, a little bit over halfway. There's room to have someone else come in and learn and grow in the position and mend those regional relationships. Go ahead, Councillor Kashoni.
Thank you. Well, first of all, when we talked about bringing things to the public in terms of the RDKB, I don't believe this should have ever been brought into an open council meeting. If Diane Langman interpret my challenging and asking questions as rude or disrespectful, that has never been the case. Not only has that never been the case, but she has never spoken to me about it, other than that one email that she sent, which was not sent to administration. It was an email, not even at a meeting. It was an email sent to the East End Committee, alerting them to the fact that if the policy that was going to be going through continued, we would be in for hundreds of thousands of dollars of cost. So it was within there. I've never been, as far as I know, rude or disrespectful. And that's not been the case. It has not been the case. It has never been raised. And furthermore, we have a policy at the regional district that if there is a problem, we have all signed a agreement in terms of code of conduct, and that would have been the proper way. I should be afforded the same process as anybody else. This is almost well, I guess I'm not going to say the word, but it's almost character assassination when you come through from someone from the regional district who is a chair putting forth a position like this to a mayor. If the issues of the regional district, then it should be dealt with at the regional district. Now, my challenging and asking questions, I know sometimes I ask more questions than most people. In fact, there's two of us on the regional district, Ali Grieve and I, who are always asking questions about budget and process and policy, which all impacts the city of Trail. That's my job on the RDKB. It's not to be friends with Diane Langman or to soothe her because she's upset with me. It's my job is to protect the city and its interest. And I've done that religiously on every single issue. And even more so, Diane Langman, who's concerned about this, never talked to me about it, never raised the issue. And all of the motions that either Ali Grieve or I have put forward, she has supported, or her alternate has supported, and she, by voting that way, has actually saved the city of Trail and the East End millions of dollars, which is going to continue into the future. Now, I've been on the receiving end of disrespect and rudeness from this table. I have been disrespected and been spoken to rudely by at least two people at this particular table, by two councillors at this particular table. Well, a mayor and council, in actual fact. That's how I feel. I feel I've been, disrespected. And I can differentiate between challenging and asking questions. If you want to sit on the regional district and never challenge and never ask questions and agree with administration time and time again, back and forth, you'll never get into trouble. Everybody will love you because nobody gets upset. The allegations by Diane Langman are unfounded. They are simply an email sent. They're not official, they're not formal, they're not on RDKB letterhead. They haven't been discussed. It hasn't been raised at the regional district. Nowhere. So this is something that, that has to be addressed at the regional district, and it's going to be addressed. Even if I were not at the regional district, her behavior in terms of reporting to you, and then you making this public in terms of this issue, and I have to assume it's all public now, is a concern. So further to that, this particular, my job, and I want to discuss this, there's two things here. My job at the regional district is to ensure that the city of Trail is protected from excessive cost increases. And that's what I've done. The regional district is now and has been for a number of years divided. It's still divided. The East End is finally exercising its rights over the revenues from the dam. And the fact that the East End pays the majority of the cost of regional service is the reason why this issue has come forward so many times. Naturally, you're going to get pushback, and you're going to get pushback from administration too. They want to have a more complete use of the dam revenues across the entire region. But that dam revenues were never intended to be used across the entire region. They were never intended. They were intended for the East End. My challenging of the administrative recommendations along with Ali Grieve is a necessity, because without this challenge, we would have been exposed to hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional costs in the 2021 budget. Now, I've done the analysis on the budgets. I've done the analysis back and forth. I spent literally hundreds of hours on it to make sure we don't. I have actually put motions forward from the East End. Every single motion I've either put forward or seconded at the East End, every single motion has been approved by the East End at 100%. 100%. Not one person, neither Diane Langman, has ever voted against one of those motions. In the actual analysis of what has happened in terms of these motions and the pushback at the particular East End and at the board table, the East End committee, the 7 people sitting in that committee, have saved their constituents over $3.5 million. $3.5 million without affecting services one bit, not one bit. So I just don't understand how, a chair of a board can come here and interject herself, actually interfere in the internal workings of the city of Trail. That's how I view it. I view it as her interfering in the internal services of the city of Trail. The fire service alone, which I am 100% behind, and I wanted to protect the fire service. And that's why we made the motion to transfer $500,000 from the dam revenues into the fire service. And that $500,000 is going to go in every single year forever, unless the East End turns it down. That saves $500,000 a year every single year. When we transferred another $200,000, we transferred another $200,000 in to cover the costs of the deputy fire chief. That's all paid for. That's paid for. Then my motion on the transit to transfer $150,000 a year into transit for as many years to redo all the bus stops, to redo the complete exchange downtown, so the city of Trail doesn't have to pay 10 cents. Now, when I do my analysis, I have saved the city, and this is absolutely fact, I can prove it, $1,350,000. Now, because Diane Langman feels that she's slighted, or Diane Langman feels that I'm rude, it's a matter of perspective. If you sit back and you never say anything, well, then you're wonderful. That's fine. But that's not the case. I've not been rude. I've not been rude to her. I've not been rude to other people. That's a matter of interpretation. You know, it's really funny because I've got people at that table. Many of them have hardly said a word, but they voted strongly in favor of what we were doing on the East End. I've never had one director say to me, you know, Robert, you're not respectful. I've never had one director say that to me at all. The only person who's ever said anything to me, and it's only in an email that's pieced together. It's not even an email that went to staff. It's an email that went only to the East End. It wasn't even at a meeting. The email I sent wasn't even at a meeting. It was a background information. And I said very clearly in that email, I apologize in advance if in fact I'm wrong in my analysis. But when the vote came down on that particular issue, the East End supported me. So I don't know why I have to bear the brunt of 5.5 months now, 5.5 months of people coming back and saying to me, you're disrespectful. You yourself, Mayor Payson, you've called me in a public meeting that I was bullying. And not only I was bullying, disrespectful, and harassing. That's not true. That was never true, and it is not true. So people can say anything they want. People can say whatever they want. But if you think that you can go to the regional district and save money and get things done and never question administration or never push back on policy, then you're dreaming. You're a dreamer, because that's not how it's done. Everybody there is pushing for something. The boundary, and I don't blame them, they are pushing to get the dam revenues. So the last meeting, on the last board meeting, Diane Langman had the deciding vote on the dam revenues. She had the deciding vote. It would have been 6-6. She voted in favor of the East End controlling the dam revenues. So every time I see Diane Langman vote, I say to myself, well, she's on my side. So I'm blindsided by the fact that she writes you a letter, you know, rather than coming to me, or rather than you coming to me. You don't come to me and say, gee, Robert, what's going on? What's the problem? I'd have been more than happy to talk to you. I'd have been more than happy to talk to Diane. But without any due process, this is just character assassination as far as I'm concerned. It's really, it's unbelievable. I just can't even understand it. I won't go through much more, but I will tell you this. Unless something is done with the policy that's been presented by the finance department and appearing to be supported by the administration, because it's built into the 5-year plan, the policy in actual fact is going to increase the cost of fire services almost $1 million in 4 years. So all the money that we transfer to the dam to save the fire service now is going to be for nothing. And the fire service, and I've said this even in an open meeting, the fire service, without that kind of support, with this kind of an increase, cannot stand. And Ali Grieve said it quite soon. It is not sustainable given what's going on. So here I go down there to support the fire service, to make sure we've got that fire service, get the money, find where we can get the money so we don't have to tax people. And all of a sudden, I'm the bad guy. Well, it's not true. I'm not the bad guy. And that's all I have to say. And people can do what they want.
Thank you, Councillor Kashoni. Does anyone
Thank
want to make a comment?
I'd like to comment.
Okay, Councillor Santori?
Well, I'd like to begin by saying that, first of all, I don't think anybody questioned what your job is at the regional district. I think the issue at hand here is the means in which you attempt to accomplish your goal on our behalf. And when I personally take into account the complaint put forward by our Chief Administrative Officer, the findings of the third-party investigator, and the resulting settlement. So, we need to be very clear with the public. This was not a resignation. This was not a termination. It was not a retirement. It was a settlement. And I'll let the public interpret what a settlement means. So when I take that into account, I also take into account the comments from Diane Langman. For those that know Diane, she is probably the most non-political person you'd ever want to meet. She is a very quiet, kind person. And in addition to that, when I read the email exchange that was provided by Mayor Payson, I reached out to Diane Langman, and I have a personal note from her to me, which confirms everything that Lisa has reported on those allegations. I think it's going to be very difficult for us to move forward in a positive way and in a way in which it will best serve the people of this community. So I think it is time for a change at the regional district for a number of reasons. But more specifically, I think there has been a pattern that has developed that we have all witnessed with Councillor Kashoni. You can deny you didn't witness it, but I don't think you could look yourself in the mirrors if you were to deny that you've not witnessed these outbreaks before, over and above the complaint that was put forward by David. So on that note, I do want to make a motion right now, if it's appropriate, that we do make a change, and I am going to put forward, if she accepts it, for Colleen to take over as our representative on the regional district.
I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Jones, I guess at this point, I did see your hand up, Councillor Doby, but Councillor Jones, I guess we need to know if through this process, and you can internalize that a little bit, if you accept the nomination to become the new regional district rep for the last 18 months of our term. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. So, wow, I'm feeling kind of blindsided right now. Our discussions previously included the fact that the regional district directors hadn't had the opportunity to see this information yet. And my understanding was that Robert was going to take it back to them for discussion and hopefully report back to council. I'm not denying that I wouldn't want to be on the regional district board as a director at this time. I'm just saying I'm not comfortable with the process and how this is happening. I respectfully would like to say that I don't know anybody that has more knowledge around the regional district board than Robert. I know he puts in a ton of time. He has a lot of information. He's very passionate about his work. And I understand that some people can take that passion as being aggressive, but I just feel that there needs to be an opportunity for the regional district to internalize this and come back to the city of Trail with their, and when I say internalize this, I think it's only out of respect that the city of Trail give the regional district the opportunity to look into this issue as well. And so, well, I can't make a motion because I spoke on it. So I'll just leave it there. And again, I just want to say that I'm really disappointed how this has come to the city council, how it was presented, and how we're dealing with it, quite honestly. Because when we talked about in November 2018, regional district elections being done in open, I don't think that was part of this, what we're doing here tonight was part of that process. So I'm really uncomfortable right now about this whole situation. Having said that, if the opportunity and the time came for when Robert was to step down, because I mean, if you look at the Municipal Government Act, his actual position is from the time of election until the next election. This is something that we voted on and something that council voted on. He's in that position for that term. It's not a committee that's appointed. He's not appointed to the regional district. He's there for the term of the 4 years. And that's my understanding. As I read through the Municipal Government Act, the Community Charter, the Public Service Act, you know, there's, I have a list here. So I would like to leave it at that. You know, I'm just being honest. I am really comfortable with this whole process. I think the regional district needs to be involved with it, just as we needed to be involved with it when we did our complaint process with the CAO.
Michelle, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to provide some clarification to Councillor Jones's indication around the length of service at the regional level. Section 198 of the Local Government Act indicates that when a municipal director is appointed, they serve then at the pleasure of council. So what that means is that it isn't a fixed term. They will serve as the regional rep until such time that the council who made that appointment determines a change is to be made. That could be done annually, it could be done on an as-needed basis. It may continue through the course of a 4-year election cycle. But just to be very clear, that it is at the pleasure of council, is the terminology that's used, if a change is to be made to the regional representation within the 4-year cycle.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you. Thank you for that, Michelle. I actually did look into this. It is under the Municipal Government Act, you're right. And it says the heading is appointment and terms of office for municipal directors. Each municipal director is to be appointed at the pleasure by the council from amongst its members. The terms of office of the municipal director begins when the person takes office. It continues until the earliest of the following: another director taking office in the original director's place, the director ceasing to be a member of the council before the next general election, which would be November 30th in the year of the general election. That's my understanding from the Municipal Government Act, and that's what I was quoting. And this was updated actually June 2021.
The local, sorry, not to be contrary, comments, but the Local Government Act that applies in British Columbia, section 198, the wording is similar, but not exactly as you've read, but it does indicate the term of office of a municipal director begins when the person takes office in accordance with section 202, subsection 3 of the Local Government Act, which is meaning when the oath or affirmation of office is taken at the regional level, and continues until the earliest of the following: another director taking office in the original director's place. So what that means is that another municipal representative can take the place of the regional director as appointed when decided by that council.
And I just want to make one note, and maybe Michelle, you can clarify as well. When we voted at that meeting to have our discussions and vote of the regional district representative in open, when we do that, councillors always have the opportunity to, basically do a small speech for why they want their appointment. And I just want to remind councillors that just because things are uncomfortable doesn't mean that you get to segment half of it off into a closed meeting. The decision was a unanimous vote of council to bring regional district appointments forward in an open meeting. And hence, with the context I was provided, that is what I did. Councillor Santori?
Just one final note. First of all, I don't believe that Diane Langman was fabricating, lying, or making this up based on what I read in the email and based on her response to me when I reached out to her. I would love to share this. I don't want to implicate any other councillors in this. This is a matter of whether or not we accept what was said and what we have witnessed in terms of Robert's behavior in the past. I cannot idly sit back and condone the treatment of our staff, the way of David Peroda specifically, and from what I read on how the staff at the regional district, that is not acceptable. It was never acceptable, but more or less acceptable this day and age. However, if Councillor Kashoni and some of the other councillor feels that there was nothing that was done wrong, then I have two more motions to make. And the one I'm going to make now is that the report from the private investigator, or from the third-party investigator on the complaint by David Perahudov be made public.
Got a motion on the floor.
I'd like to second that motion.
No, you already have a motion. on the floor.
Hang on.
Sorry.
Mr. Kaiser?
No, Robert's right.
I was going to raise what Councillor Kashoni raised. There is a motion that was moved and seconded on the floor that you haven't yet voted on. So,
But I assume it was.
Motion at this time.
Yeah, so Councillor Jones says that she's not willing to step up at this time to take that role. So with that, I would assume that the motion would, how can we proceed if we can't force her to take a position that she's not ready to take at this time?
Can I make a motion to defer?
If you wish.
Michelle, would it be defer or postpone? What's the word we got to use here?
What would you be looking to delay until? And I think
Well,
that
I think I don't want to put words in Colleen's mouth. I think Colleen would feel more comfortable making a decision after it goes through a process at the regional district, and upon getting the results of that process, she will then decide at that time whether or not she wants to take on the position. Is that correct, Colleen?
Yes, thank you, Sandy. You said it better than I could.
I just want to acknowledge, though, I don't think we can force a process at the regional district.
No.
So we're going to handle it the way they wish to handle it based
Well, I
on
think-
their operations.
I'm sure Diane will read the minutes of this meeting and she will do whatever she feels is appropriate at the regional level and then take it from there.
Okay, so
Well, here's a question though, point of information.
hang on,
Is-
there's a motion to defer. Michelle,
Defer what?
there was the motion to defer, right? Colleen's appointment, is
Yes.
that was?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful though to have some conversation around what council's wishes are, and then we can frame the motion if it is to be a deferral motion accordingly. So perhaps it'd be appropriate to hear from a few more council members just park that thought for a moment and hear from more council members around what your hopes are with this matter.
Okay, anyone else want to speak? Councillor Butler, go ahead.
My thoughts around this matter is simply succession planning and the opportunity for growth and learning. I do recall a conversation several years ago at the beginning of the term that there were only certain people who knew how to deal with this level of government, and I think it's quite appropriate that somebody else take on a chance to learn. I'm not sure what everyone's intentions are going forward, but I think Trail would be at quite a disadvantage if there's someone stepping up very green or unorganized to the plate in 2022.
Okay, Councillor Dobie, your hand up. Thanks, Councillor Butler. And Carol, you have your phone on mute or your computer on mute.
I'd just like to have an opportunity to address the report submitted by Chair Diane Langman. I have trouble accepting the report because of the way it was done. I think I would have felt a little bit more comfortable with receiving a report that I know had not just been part of her opinion, but had gone through her board and been managed internally as it should have been, whether Robert would have been found in breach of their code of conduct or another code, I'm not sure of. But I think that is when you're dealing with those kinds of issues, that's the fair and responsible way to do it. I feel like, and I'm not trying to say this was done on purpose, but it's almost like something stuck in the back door when it wasn't so open to all of us, that it had followed a certain protocol. And I think that's a protocol that we all expect when we have issues. So that's my view on the report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I'd like to make well, we've got one motion on the floor, so I'll wait to put my motion forward.
Okay.
Just point of information is defer to when?
Well, first we're going to have Eleanor speak, and then
If she wants.
I think if she wants, she put her hand up.
Yeah, I agree with what Carol said about Diane Langman. I think this was brought to our attention in the wrong way, regardless of who she spoke to before, who she didn't speak to. I think it was done in the wrong way. I don't think that if the situation was reversed, that she would like somebody to send an email like that regarding her behavior. And I also agree with what Colleen has proposed with regards to wanting the regional district opinion with regards to her appointment. Thank you.
Councillor Kishoni, you have a question on the.
In order to have this go through, then the report that was made, the report we're talking about, and all the contents of Diane Langman I have to be able to present it. Is that understood?
But you can do what you want at the regional district. I mean,
Well, it's pointless in going to defer or pointless in doing that if I can't take the information from that report. And we've mentioned Diane Langman now. She's dad. We've mentioned the email. Am I going to be able to take that information to the regional district?
Kishoni, the email was you and I. It wasn't a secret. I don't know.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm just asking. I need to know. I need to know.
If you want to bring the email to the regional district, it's
For the report, the whole report. The whole report, not just the email, what you said, what other people said, what everybody said. It's not just one email. It's a number of things. Is that information available for me to bring to the regional district? Because then I have to, otherwise I have nothing to bring.
Councillor Kaiser,
Nothing can be done. Nothing can be done.
Follow.
So I think if I'm understanding Councillor Kishoni correctly, he's not referring to the third-party investigative report. He's referring to the reporting that was prepared by you, Mayor Pazin, outlining the concerns advanced via email and other means from the board. I think it would be appropriate if council feels it would be worthwhile for Councillor Kashoni to raise those concerns, to make a motion authorizing the release of that report that you authored, Mayor Pazin, to the regional district. I think there's no information in there that would or should be protected from the regional district. So I think if that is the case, once the motions, once we can consecutively deal through some of these motions, it would be appropriate for council to authorize that report to be shared with the whole of the regional district board.
Yeah, I would make that motion eventually.
Okay.
I have no problem. I mean, we're dealing with it. The report was done in a public meeting, so it's accessible to anybody at any time. But I have no problem giving it to them in writing. It's for the public record.
Yeah.
It's already on the public record.
Where are we at now, Michelle? Sorry,
It
just a bit of information.
The reporting was verbalized, but the actual hard copy report that Mayor Pazin prepared for council's consideration is not found in the public realm just yet.
Right, not yet.
So we do have a motion that Councillor Jones be appointed to serve as the municipal director of the board of the regional district. If council wishes to defer decision-making to allow some review by the regional district, a motion could be put forward to defer until that time. I think just to be clear, though, that's not a tabling motion. So if you are going to defer it, you can have robust conversation around it if you wish. With that said, I think it's important for council to remember that it is only you as Trails elected officials who can make the appointment at the regional level. So there's nothing in the regional district review, if there is going to be a review of Councillor Kashoni's conduct, that would remove him as a director. They would not be able to force or I'll say apply a change. It is only you as Trail Council who can make that decision, and it is up to you as to when that decision should be made if you do feel there's a risk to relationship at the regional level.
Okay, so Councillor Kashoni, does that make sense with respect to timing of deferral?
Well, how long when is it? We're not going to be meeting hardly at all in the summer.
Well, we can't control what happens at the regional district level, speed of, so it's deferred until, I guess, it's handled.
Okay. Yep.
Councillor Santori?
Well, just so that there's clarification on what we expect from the regional district, and I'm just suggesting this wording is that possibly from the mayor, along with her report, that we received an email from Diane Langman making allegations, which if found to be true, would be disturbing to, which I'm not sure what the word is if found to be true, are disturbing and of concern to the city of Trail. And you direct that to the East End 7 or to the board of directors of the regional district to either affirm, deny, or say there's no problem. At least there's a specific request of what we want from them. So we received these allegations. We want to confirm whether or not these allegations are true, if people have witnessed this, and do people of the regional district share the same concerns that were brought to our attention from Diane Langman. Then at least we get a whole perspective from the board. Just a suggestion on how you may want to, council might want to handle it, so it's specific to Diane Langman's allegations.
Councillor, hang on, Ms. McIsaac.
I was just going to add that if council were to agree along those lines, then it wouldn't it wouldn't delay decision-making until the end of some sort of process to be determined by the regional district. It would be simply as Councillor Santori suggested, an affirmation as to whether or not the allegations that have been put forward, if there's a sharing of those concerns at the board level.
Well, just point of information, the only way those concerns can be shared is we have a process. We have a process, much the same as we have in terms of here. We have a signed code of conduct. And if in fact there is a problem, the policy clearly states, and I've got it there, clearly states that it has to be, first of all, a conversation between me and who's ever saying it, not writing to Miss, Lisa. It's a process, just like we went through the process with Mr. Perhudoff, just like we may go through a process with other people here on council, and this is the same process. So that process is quite clear. That's what it is. It's not who feels what or what. I mean, I feel one thing one time, another thing another time. So the process has to go through. So what I'm saying is the process, it will not be handled in July or August. It will not be handled in that time.
I would imagine that it would depend on what process Chair Langman wanted to put forward as well, as far as.
It's not her process. It's a policy of the board. It's not hers.
Anyway, Councillor, go ahead, your hand first, and Councillor Santori second.
Okay, I'd like to place a motion on the floor that we release.
We have a motion out open right now, a motion to defer, so we can't put another motion down until we deal with a deferral motion. And then Councillor Santori had a motion, and then you would be third with your motion. So, okay, so let's just deal with this. So Councillor Santori, did you have something else to say before we?
Point of information, defer to when? I'm not clear. Defer what? To when?
My intent here, I'm not debating whether or not there's a process, Robert. All I'm saying is for us to initiate whatever process the regional district has, we make them aware of the allegations that were made by Diane Langman.
Right.
So if these allegations are found to be true, it would be of concern to the city of Trail. Please undergo whatever process you have at the regional district and then respond back to us in terms of your findings of these allegations. We're not dictating the process. All we're saying is, this is what we received. If they're found to be true, we have concerns and it's disturbing. So do whatever process you have, and after you've undertaken your process, please advise us of your findings. That's all we're asking. And then the rest is up to the regional district on how they want to handle it.
Okay, so we have a deferral motion on the floor, correct, Ms. McIsaac?
Was there a second for deferring?
Clarification, deferring. What will the motion read exactly?
That decision-making be deferred pending the conclusion of an RDKB-led process related to the conduct concern. Something along those lines.
Oh.
Did I have someone to second that? Councillor Jones, I thought you put your hand up for deferral, but it might have been just a movement of your hand. You're on mute.
Yeah, I think it was a movement.
Okay, so you know what, I'm just gonna move this forward. If we want to defer, I'm gonna put a deferral motion on the board. I'll second that. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Against, if any? Okay, so Councillor Kashoni was against, everyone else was for deferral. Now, Councillor Santori, did I miss you because you were going to put a motion forward?
Yeah, I believe I made it and it was seconded. And I think the public has the right to know the findings of the third-party investigation report and that it should be made public.
Ms. McIsaac, do you have a record of who moved and seconded that? Was it Councillor Butler that seconded that? Councillor, I know it was kind of mixed up with.
I'm prepared to second it, Michelle, if it wasn't already recorded that way. Yeah.
Santori moved it, Counselor Butler seconded it. Counselor Kashoni, you have your hand up.
So the only thing you want to have released is not all our discussion, is the findings and the recommendations,
No, the entire report.
the entire report.
Yes.
Well, the findings and the recommendations summarize the entire report. Why would you release the entire report? Is that what you
Well,
really want?
I don't have to answer that. I just made a motion to
Okay,
release I don't have to give,
that's fine. Yeah,
I'm trying to be respectful. I'm making a motion. You can vote against it.
Yep.
The motion is to release the report in its entirety.
Okay, any other comments?
Nope.
Okay, all in favor? Against, if any? Carried. Okay, so that was defeated.
I'll move that.
Hang on, Counselor Dobie was next.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're on mute, Counselor Dobie.
My dogs act up, so that's why I go on mute all the time. I'd like to place a motion on the floor allowing Robert Kashoni to take the two emails, I guess, or memorandums, one that was received from the chair of the regional district, Ms. Langman, and also Mayor Pazin's report back to the regional district, and ask that it be presented to the committee as a whole, and for them to enact upon it internally, and that we need to respect them to follow their own due process and not interfere in any of this, other than saying that we approve that Robert take the two documents to the regional district.
Second,
Take the documents to the regional district for consideration.
Yes.
Is that adequate? Ms.
and
McCarthy?
review, but there has to be the whole thing. It has to be the whole thing.
No problem.
Okay, that's good.
All right, all in favor? Against any? Carried unanimously. Now, Robert, did you have that motion? Was that the same as Carol?
That was the motion I was going to make. The motion for allow me to do that. And if Michelle could, by tomorrow, perhaps send it to me in a separate email form, exactly as it was presented at the other meeting there today.
So Councillor Kashoni, staff will forward that to you when time allows. I'm sure they'll do it as soon as possible.
You bet.
Councillor Santori, you have your.
I have one last motion to make, and that is that the minutes of the closed meeting held June the 10th be made public.
June the 10th.
June the 10th, I don't know if, can I give specifics or an overview of what the minutes were, Michelle?
I'd say that you probably need to be careful.
Let me make reference to the minutes before I give you advice there.
Okay.
June the 10th.
We have received some cautionary wording from our legal counsel around all of the processes that has been undertaken. So Councillor Santori, I will just remind you to speak in generalities with respect to the matter you want to raise. And so it would be appropriate, as long as you maintain just general references, to remind council of the matter that would have been discussed at the special closed council meeting of June 10th.
The minutes that I'm requesting deal with the options that were provided to us by the third-party investigator. And council discussed and ultimately had a vote on the options presented.
Okay. So you made a motion to release the meeting minutes from
June
June
the 10th.
10th. 2021. Do I have someone to second that motion?
No, I don't think that's a good idea. Nevertheless,
Just for clarification, it's just going to be the minutes that we have in our package today.
Yes. I believe so, yes.
Second that.
Councilor Butler seconding that. Okay. All in favor? Against, if any? And that was defeated. Okay. All right, so is there any other motions on the table for this discussion?
well, I'd like to move that we not have this discussion again until we get reporting back from the regional district. So we don't have to go through this again. No discussion on this anymore.
Second the motion.
I think that is the intent of the deferral motion that's already
Well, I
been.
like to put it, I still like to put it forward like that.
Ms. Buffini, did you capture that? I didn't get it. Thank you.
That we're not going to, a motion is that we're not going to be discussing this policy, this process, this thing, David, Mr. Parahudoff, whatever it happens to be, until we get a report back from the regional district, until I bring the report back from the regional district.
So I just want to clarify, Councillor Kashoni, that the CAO Parahudoff issue is an internal issue of the city of Trail, and then there's your appointment, which is the regional district issue. And I don't think it's appropriate to essentially gag council on and say that you can't discuss it. It's there is a press release that went out. I think if your intention is to not talk about the RDKB appointment issue until we get those findings from the regional district, I think that is the intent of your motion, right? And it would,
Yeah, so we don't have to go through this turmoil anymore.
okay, so we got someone moved and seconded, Ms. McKaiser, right? Do we have that? Just want to make sure, sorry, Sandy, you have that on record, the first and second?
I have the motion made by Councillor Kashoni and seconded by Councillor Doby.
Okay, great. All right.
Sorry,
So
what's the motion? I mean, what can't we talk about anymore?
I believe that Councillor Kashoni is saying that he doesn't want us to talk about this regional district appointment and concerns brought forward by Chair Langman until the regional district receives a letter, has time to analyze it and address it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Yep.
When are we going to sorry,
Councillor Butler?
when would it be appropriate then to discuss the other breach of conducts that have been brought forward? Will those be pending?
That's with staff and legal. So
Okay.
that's closed. That's closed. That shouldn't be discussed.
Okay.
And I just want to make a differentiation of breaches of conduct brought forward, breaches of violence in the workplace versus a letter of concern asked for conduct. It's a bit of a different process. It's a formal process where you're initializing action from staff versus bringing concern forward in a less formal way. Okay.
I'm not clear what you mean, Lisa.
Pardon me?
I'm not clear what you mean, what you're saying.
Well, I'm not gonna. Let me just make it really clear. CAO Parahudoff filed a breach of conduct, a code of conduct violation against you, and a violence in the workplace policy breach. That is not what Diane Langman did. She sent me correspondence of concern based on conduct. It was enough of a concern to me that I advanced it, but she didn't do it through the regional district or the City of Trails code of conduct process, right? So it's like a formal complaint at the highest level versus not. Okay.
Well, that
So,
would be,
so how the regional district, So how the regional district chooses to internalize it when it comes back to them is up to the regional district to determine, because we don't have control over the regional district, right?
Great. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so we're moving on to the consent agenda now. So there, sorry? Oh, did I?
On the floor to vote.
Okay, so all in favor? Against, if any? Carried. Okay. So now we can, oh, go ahead, Councillor Jones. Oh, and you're back on mute.
Can anybody else hear that background noise?
Yeah.
Well, now that you took yourself off mute, I can hear it on yours, but I couldn't hear it when you were on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. My cord was on my keyboard.
Oh, that's okay. All right. Okay, you can hear fine now?
Yes, thank you.
No bubbles in the background. He's missing. Okay, so consent agenda.
Move receipt.
Okay, 2 items on the consent agenda. Councillor Kashoni has moved receipt. Is there someone to second the items on the consent agenda? Councillor Santori, does anything need to be pulled out of the consent agenda?
Go
ahead.
I know everybody's getting tired and, but I did want to talk about the letter from the city of Pitt Meadows. Since they've reported and, you know, moved this letter forward, there's been 751 more bodies found in Saskatchewan. To me, I think it's really important that these bodies have names and that we be able to mark their graves and show that they were a part of this world and, you know, where they died. And so people can go and respect them, you know, in the respect that they deserve. So I think it's important that, I don't know if we write a letter confirming our support or how we move this forward, or just talking about it here is enough. I think it's important that we do recognize that these, and I'm sure there's more deaths, more bodies to be found. It's very unfortunate, but I think we need to recognize that. And I also, okay, I'll wait till that one is, so do I make a motion that we write a letter and support or send a letter to the commission on calls to action? I'm not sure, sorry, the process there.
Ms. Isaac, do you want to maybe provide some clarification of what we can do here?
Yeah, so once you do vote on the receipt of the items, if Councillor Jones wants to advance a motion to indicate council support of the position put forward by the city of Pitt Meadows, we would write a very similar letter in content to the members of Parliament, a member of Legislative Assembly, as the Pitt Meadows letter was addressed, adding your voice to that of Pitt Meadows.
Very good. Okay. So let's move for receipt of the consent agenda items. So I believe we have Councillor Kashoni first, and is it Councillor Santori second, I believe?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried. Okay, so now the second item is to pull out item 7.1, City of Pitt Meadows, Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action 75, and to ask staff to write a letter in support of this initiative. Is that fair? Fair wording? Okay, great. So Councillor Jones is going to make that motion, and do I second Councillor Santori? Thank you very much. Okay, all in favor? Against, if any? Carried. Okay. Any new business from the floor? Councillor Santori, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure most of you know that Lauren Day from Trail is going to be attending once again at the Olympics in Japan here in 2022. And I was hoping that maybe through our communications director, Andrea Jolly, we could I don't know what process she would use, but to invite people from our community and from the surrounding area or Canada for that matter, but mostly around our area to send well wishes to Lauren and wish her the best of luck and her Canadian national softball team at the Olympics in Japan. I believe this is Lauren's fourth Olympics, and I believe she's 43 years old, a mama 3. So it's quite a milestone for someone to be there representing Canada and to be asked again to compete this year in Japan. And I think as a city, we're very proud of course, what her brother David achieved in Major League Baseball, but equally, I think Lauren Bay has accomplished a lot as well, significantly. And I was hoping maybe Andrea could develop something inviting people to send a message of congratulations and good luck to Lauren.
Okay. I just want to correct, her brother is Jason Bay, correct?
Oh, Jason, sorry,
Yeah.
David's the dad. David did okay too.
Yeah, you can congratulate their parents too. So Councillor Santor is making a motion on that. Councillor Jones is seconding. Okay.
I think that's a great idea.
All in favor?
I,
Any? Carried, thank you. Any other new business from the floor? Councillor Joby, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor Payson. Because we very seldom get a new business in East Trail, please drive down Second Avenue and on the left-hand side, just as you're going down the little hill there, please notice the new business that is opening up. The whole building has been painted white and black. The signage is fabulous. And it sounds like it's going to be a very interesting business. I believe it is called Unique, the business. Welcome to East Trail.
Very good. Thank you very much. We'll watch for that. Any other new business from the floor? No? Okay, RDKB reports. We have RDKB Building Department report of May 2021. And the motion is to receive for information.
Move receipt.
Okay, Councillor Dilby, second. Councillor Butler, thank you. All in favor?
I,
Against? Carried. I believe Ms. McIsaac, there is a late item from bylaw 2905. Do you want to advance that?
I will. Thank you, Your Worship. Circulated to council earlier today is bylaw number 2905. It's a zoning bylaw amendment bylaw that deals with the rezoning of a property at Highway 3B. It doesn't have an assigned civic address, but you will recall that council gave 2 readings to the zoning amendment bylaw some time back. Public hearing was held. The bylaw was then given 3rd reading, and we were awaiting approval of the Ministry of Transportation. The bylaw change will see the zoning of the property at Highway 3B changed from R1 to R1S to allow the development of a secondary suite within the principal building to be constructed. The construction is being undertaken on behalf of BC Housing, and we will see once the bylaw is adopted and construction proceeds, the development of a 4-bedroom group home, licensed group home, plus within the secondary suite, unlicensed 2-bedroom dwelling for seniors or people who do not have a handicap that require accessibility standards, whereas the 4-unit licensed dwelling will be accessible, fully accessible, and intended for those who are wheelchair bound. Late on Friday, we did receive word back from the Ministry of Transportation that the bylaw had received their approval. So the signed bylaw has come back from the Ministry of Transportation after the time of our agenda preparation. So I'm hoping that council will indulge the late item at today's meeting with respect to zoning bylaw amendment bylaw number 2905, and it would be recommended that you proceed with adoption of the bylaw.
Okay, do I have someone to make that motion?
so moved.
Sorry, Councillor Butler, I think you had your hand up, and Councillor Doby, you said so moved?
I did.
Oh,
Eleanor.
Councillor Doby Robinson, thank you. I couldn't hear very clearly. Does anyone have any questions on this matter?
No.
No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any? Carried. Okay, and that is our last item. So move for adjournment to 8:45.
So moved.
Counselor Dobie, thank you very much. Have a nice evening, everyone. Stay